Guarantees, safe conducts, and incentives, is the offer that opposition leader María Corina Machado puts on the table to President Nicolás Maduro for a negotiated transition of power, amid her allegations of fraud and certainty of the opposition's victory in the recent elections. With a firm belief that this is the necessary path to overcoming the political crisis in Venezuela, Machado aims to initiate a dialogue that allows for a peaceful and orderly resolution to the current situation. This proposal not only reflects her strategy to pressure the government but also her desire to avoid a violent confrontation that could further exacerbate the country's already dire situation. From hiding, which she has been forced into since last week due to fears for her life and possible reprisals for her political stance, Machado responded via voice messages to a questionnaire sent by AFP through her team of collaborators. Despite the difficulties, she remains determined to fight for change in the country, convinced that only through a negotiated transition can a better future be guaranteed for all Venezuelans. Opposition leader María Corina Machado speaks resolutely about a negotiation for democratic transition, a process that, according to her, includes guarantees, safe conducts, and incentives for all parties involved, especially for the regime that was defeated in the recent presidential election. Machado, known for her determination and constant fight for democracy in Venezuela, views this negotiation as a crucial opportunity to alter the course of the country. "We are determined to move forward with negotiations," insists the 56-year-old leader, making it clear that this is not just a mere statement, but a firm and resolute commitment. She understands that this will be a complex and delicate transition process, which will require not only political strategies but also an effort to unite the entire nation toward a common goal. Machado believes that only through national consensus, including all voices, can a new Venezuela be built, where democracy and justice are fundamental pillars. The National Electoral Council, CNE, an institution that has been repeatedly accused of having a pro-government bias, declared Nicolás Maduro the winner with 52% of the votes in the recent presidential election. However, this proclamation has sparked strong controversies, as the CNE did not publish the complete details of the tally, claiming that their system was hacked, which prevented the disclosure of the exact results and raised suspicions about the transparency of the process. The opposition, on the other hand, claims that their candidate, Edmundo González Urrutia, actually won the election with a decisive 67% of the votes. As proof of their claims, they have presented a website containing scanned copies of more than 80% of the electoral records. According to the opposition, these records unequivocally show that the real winner was González Urrutia, not Maduro, which has fueled allegations of fraud and manipulation by the government. The situation has heightened political tensions in the country, with the opposition demanding a thorough and transparent review of the election results. Chavismo, for its part, dismisses the allegations of fraud and asserts that the evidence presented by the opposition is forged. They argue that the website with the scanned records is a fabrication intended to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the electoral process. In an attempt to validate the results, President Nicolás Maduro has requested that the Supreme Court certify the election, a move that has been heavily criticized by the opposition and academics. They consider this process to be inappropriate and aims solely at legitimizing an apparent electoral fraud. María Corina Machado, opposition leader, refuses to be intimidated and continues to insist that Maduro has completely, absolutely lost legitimacy. For her, the evidence is clear. All Venezuelans and the world know that Edmundo González won overwhelmingly in these elections, and that Maduro is trying to impose the biggest fraud in the history of this country. Her conviction is strong, and she asserts that, despite the government's attempts to perpetuate a deception, it will not succeed. The opposition is determined to fight to the end to have the true will of the people recognized, which they believe has been ignored and distorted by Maduro's regime. "I feel profoundly proud of what we have done, of what Venezuelan society has accomplished, overcoming all the obstacles in the most unequal and arbitrary election in terms of the abuses and transgressions of the regime," adds María Corina Machado, reflecting her satisfaction and the collective pride in the effort made. Despite the enormous difficulties in facing an environment marked by repression and manipulation, Machado highlights the bravery and determination of the Venezuelan people, who managed to make their voices heard in a context of extreme inequality and arbitrariness. Machado, the leading opposition figure, has been central in the fight against the regime. She took on the leadership of the majority opposition when she swept the primaries last October, designed to select the candidate who would face Maduro in the presidential election. However, a politically motivated disqualification orchestrated by the government prevented her from participating directly in the race. Instead, González Urrutia, a 74-year-old diplomat who was virtually unknown until then, was hastily registered as the candidate after other potential contenders faced similar obstacles. Despite this last-minute change, Machado emphasizes the unity and strength of the opposition movement. "We are a team, an inseparable bloc," she asserts, highlighting her role as the mastermind and face of the opposition campaign challenging the regime. González Urrutia, the opposition candidate, has not appeared in public for over a week, generating various speculations about his whereabouts. However, he has not confirmed whether he is in hiding, which has increased concerns and questions about his safety. He is working tirelessly every minute of the day to gain more support and advance the necessary processes both within and outside the country to assert his election as president, says María Corina Machado, highlighting that his absence is not a sign of inactivity but rather a strategic and ongoing effort to consolidate his position. Maduro's re-election has been strongly questioned on the international stage. The United States, the European Union, and several Latin American countries have expressed serious doubts about the legitimacy of the electoral process. Even left-leaning nations, such as Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, which have attempted to mediate an agreement between the parties, insist on the need for a detailed recount to clarify the reported irregularities. International forces are co-responsible for what is happening in Venezuela, Machado emphasizes, highlighting the importance of the global community at this critical moment. It is time for all the governments of the world to raise their voices against the repression and recognize Edmundo González's victory on Sunday, July 28, while simultaneously making Maduro understand that his best option is a negotiated transition. Machado is calling for decisive support to pressure the regime and facilitate a peaceful and democratic exit for Venezuela. Following the announcement of the election results, protests erupted across the country, resulting in a tragic toll of at least 24 deaths, according to reports from human rights organizations. Additionally, more than 2,200 people were detained, according to Nicolás Maduro himself, who did not hesitate to enlist 2 maximum security prisons to incarcerate protesters and opponents. This massive repression has been seen as a clear sign of the regime's fear of the growing popular dissent, which refuses to accept the results of what they consider fraudulent elections. "All Venezuelans feared for our freedom and our lives, all of us," confesses María Corina Machado, revealing the atmosphere of fear and tension that has taken hold of the country. Despite the brutal repression and violence unleashed by the regime, Machado maintains a firm and resolute stance. "I am outraged by this brutal reaction from the regime," she adds, acknowledging the pain and anger that this situation has caused her and many other Venezuelans. However, despite her indignation, Machado remains calm and confident that the struggle is not over. "I am also calm and confident that we will assert popular sovereignty and that the truth will prevail," she declares with conviction. Her hope and determination reflect the spirit of resistance that characterizes many in the opposition, who firmly believe that, despite the challenges, justice and the will of the Venezuelan people will eventually triumph over the regime's oppression. María Corina Machado firmly dismisses the recent declaration of absolute loyalty to President Nicolás Maduro by the top military command. According to her, this declaration does not reflect the true reality within the armed forces. She claims that, in fact, many soldiers responsible for overseeing the polling stations during the election supported the collection of records that were later uploaded to the opposition's website as evidence of fraud. This, according to Machado, demonstrates that support for Maduro within the armed forces is not as monolithic as the regime would like to make it seem. The only thing left for Maduro at this point is to entrench himself in generating violence and fear, Machado asserts, emphasizing that the government is using repression and terror as its last tools to remain in power. She also notes that the military support Maduro still retains is limited to a very small group of high-ranking officers, who, according to her, do not represent the true aspirations of the vast majority of the national armed forces. Machado believes that many within the armed forces are dissatisfied with the direction Maduro has taken the country and that these military personnel, like much of the civilian population, desire a shift towards a more democratic and just Venezuela. To her, the supposed monolithic unity around Maduro is an illusion created to maintain control, but it will not withstand the growing desire for change that is sweeping the country. María Corina Machado expresses with conviction her faith in the armed forces and police forces of Venezuela, stating, "I am absolutely convinced that the vast majority of military personnel, as well as police officers, long for change." According to Machado, these men and women in uniform are not detached from the reality facing the country and, like the civilian population, desire a Venezuela where there is justice, opportunities, and freedom. This belief is central to her, as she considers that the necessary change in Venezuela cannot be achieved without the support of those who have been tasked with protecting the nation. Machado is optimistic about the future, insisting that on January 10, 2025, the scheduled day for the inauguration of the next president, Venezuela will have Edmundo González Urrutia as its new president and new commander-in-chief. This statement is not just an expression of hope but also an affirmation of confidence that the opposition's struggle will culminate in the restoration of democracy in the country. For her, González Urrutia represents the change that Venezuelans so deeply desire, and his eventual rise to power will mark the beginning of a new era in Venezuela's history, an era characterized by justice, freedom, and opportunities for all. Machado trusts that the military and police forces, far from being mere tools of the regime, will play a crucial role in the transition to a renewed Venezuela, where power is not at the service of a few, but rather for the welfare of the entire nation.
Top News. Give it a like and subscribe.